Hi, my name's Mark Weiss. I live in sunny southeastern Florida, Plantation. At this stage in life, thought I'd be retired. I moved to Florida because of the tropical fish situation and can't seem to give it up. And I presently operate out of Davie, Florida, where I make some marine products. Want to bring back some of my discus products after many years with a discus farm since the late 70s.
First question, how long have you been in the aquarium hobby?
Pretty much all my life. I remember as a very small child, two things. There was always a fish tank in the house, and there were always birds in the house. So I really can't say. 60 years, 64 years, 62 years, long time.
Who got you into the aquarium hobby?
One day, my dad, I don't know, he must have killed all the fish. I remember black mollies and guppies. And I said, can I have the tank? He had a 5-gallon tank with the black marbled frame, a 2.5-gallon tank with the black marbled frame. He had a flat drum bowl, and he had the upright drum bowl. And I asked him, can I have it? And he said, fine. Oh yeah, I was taken, I got assigned taking care of the birds as soon as I was tall enough to reach the food and water cups. So that was a done deal even before that. And what got me going was my grandfather was a bookbinder. And his company bound actually the first books that like Axelrod and others wrote before they got their own printing and publishing concerns. So he'd bring me these books about tropical fish and tropical and lizards and snakes, and I just became fascinated with the whole with this whole exotic concept. It was many years later that I ran into Herb Axelrod in the middle of the Amazon, and it kind of made that childhood dream come true for a few moments at least. A good fish diet, you may be surprised to hear, contains no beef heart. The original research was, believe it or not, done in the late 1920s and first published in 1929 in the Government Fisheries Journal. Beef heart can be used as an extender. Liver is probably the only single warm-blooded animal product that's of any value. You can raise fish pretty well on liver. A combination of liver and egg in an omelet is quite a good diet, quite a good basic diet for fishes. When you bring in the marine fish, they want a much better fatty acid profile. But so do discus, so do a lot of freshwater fish. So what you get involved with is sea products, and the type of flesh that was proven to be the best was clams, actually, mollusk. So mollusk is your number one choice. Equal to that is whole fish, fatty fish, cold water fish. And then you have crustaceans, your shrimps, your krills, your mysis. So the way I handle it all is I try to create an optimum diet. In other words, something that will grow a very picky species like a tuna fish or a discus is good enough for things that are less nutritionally demanding. You can always go down, but if you're not up in the beginning, you have to realize when a female fish drops an egg, she has put every bit of nutrition into it that she can manufacture in her own body. If there's something missing as that egg develops, when it reaches a point of needing, say, lysine, which is a protein, that baby's going to die or become malformed at best. Beef heart's famous for that. Beef heart is very much famous for that. You can ameliorate that by using beef heart as an extender to a seafood diet. But even beef heart's ridiculous, because if you do a side-by-side with beef heart and lean beef, such as round roast, you'll get the same result. If you mix half beef heart and liver, you won't do too badly, or round roast and liver, you won't do too badly. But that can't be any more than half of a good diet. As far as vegetable matter and diets, forget about it. Vegetable matter, plant cell, sugars, perhaps a little bit of fat. Algae are slightly different, but basically it's carbohydrates. Fish have no carbohydrate requirement, none, zero. Even your so-called herbivorous fish, they are eating plant matter sometimes for a reason you don't even conceive of. I just read a paper that came out very recently from the university, the Central University of Venezuela's fisheries department on pacus. And this is very interesting. The black pacu, which everybody thinks is an herbivore, because indeed it does eat plant matter if you feed it to it, but it's not being nourished by the plant matter. The fish is digesting the microbes in the water and in the plant matter, and they do perfectly fine without ever having the actual plant. And the same thing with discus. When you see discus nipping at plants, they're really going for the things that you can't see, that are dwelling upon it, the rotifers or whatever it may be. Because eating is a search for protein. It's never a search for carbohydrates. Never. Fish have absolutely no carbohydrate requirement. Some plant matter has a functional use. Like in humans, we need the roughage. We need the roughage so our food goes smoothly through our intestine. We call it fiber. But nutritionally, you don't need it. So, what I do is I aim to make the diet for the most critical dietary need. And it's easily adjusted. It's very easily adjusted. It takes a while to make. I'm not going to have the time now to go into where to source everything. I can save that for a website to come or another video. But basically, the other thing that I'm going to avoid, aside from beef heart, is I'm going to avoid these gels, these alginates, these agars, these gelatins, anything that's processed by heat. Number one, they're at best junk proteins. Most of them, the alginates, are the carrageenans and the algal extracts and the bean, the guar gum, all the various gums. These are sugars and starches. Fish has no use for it. And heat destroys the value of the rest of your ingredients. You can't put a probiotic in it. And people who advertise probiotics in pelletized foods and flake foods or whatever, they're dead. They're dead after processing, unless they're top coating, which is a whole other story. The other thing is, you hear about using spirulina and algae, aside from the fact that commercial fish foods have algae generally grown in swamps as opposed to, lab grade stuff. Because lab grade spirulina, for example, microencapsulated spirulina, costs way more than people are willing to pay for fish food. These algae are totally denatured by the heat processing. So you spill hot water on your mixture, just forget about some of the ingredients you've spent a lot of money or a lot of effort to put in. So what I use is a cold binder. Things that bind are proteins. Proteins, if they're fresh, will start to denature and coagulate and become sticky if you shred them with one of this type of a boomerang blade that you'll find in the food processor. A blender blade is not as good. You should do your fish food. You want to keep protein shredded. You want to keep it sticky. Another good binder is wheat gluten. That's the gold standard. It's relatively expensive. It's almost totally usable protein by the fish, like up by 99%. And they don't get celiac disease like people do. So the gluten-free, it doesn't bother a fish. So gluten is probably your best cold binder. You can use flours of various things. You can use everything from chickpea flour to tapioca flour to rice flour. Potato flour is in fashion now because it's sticky and cheap. Oatmeal. You can use any of that stuff, but it just doesn't compare to wheat gluten, which is a purified protein from wheat. All of these flours don't contain the protein levels. You're just giving them starches. So what I do is, here's some of my ingredients.
Which was the first fish you bought yourself?
Well, the first fish I bought myself is an interesting story. The answer to that question was a baby unsexed betta, which was, I believe, 39 cents, 3 for $1. And I was too young to be allowed to walk the distance to the pet store. It also had to be a big secret because I had become fascinated with the Siamese fighting fish. I mean, I was probably 7 years old, no older than that, and I was reading about this relationship between fish and man in Asia, that they actually had a fish that was part of their society. They fought it. And it's really no joke, because in later years, when I would go to Thailand to collect bettas, wild bettas, they were actually, and I told people this, that they were actually honored that I came all the way from America to catch their national fish. They used to let me smuggle them out I didn't have to send them air freight. They'd let me, if they would see betta, I'd say, look, I'd like to bring, they're called plakat. I'd like to bring these plakat on the plane. I don't want to sell them. And they take a look and they go, well, that's our fish. Of course you may take them on the plane. Just close the box. Don't tell anybody you got them. And I mean, this fish just absolutely fascinated me. So, and still do.
What makes you different than other aquarium fish hobbyists?
One thing that makes me different is if I'm puzzled about something or want to learn something, I go to the source. So what makes me different is I guess I'm obsessed. And maybe it borders a psychosis, but it makes me happy. And I've met some great people around the world that I really, what gives me a smile is that even looking at the people in this room, one of them who lives on the banks of the Orinoco, I could probably show up at his house next month, knock on his door. He's going to welcome me. His family's going to welcome me. They're going to say, stay here, don't stay in a hotel. They're going to feed me. We're going to go fishing together, get drunk together, whatever we do. And I can do that around the world. It's not like I want to run around and mooch people, but it gives me pleasure. And I think it's the greatest thing I gained from this hobby is the friendships of the people. Because like I said, when it comes down to business and whatever, it's an adversarial situation. It comes down to talking about fish. Everybody's equal. Everybody wants to be, And like I said, I think I'm going to stick with it. This is what I'm going to call my binding mixture. Although it's pretty much complete fish food itself, what I've done is I've added stuff to wheat gluten that really grabs onto moisture. So what I have included in this is my clam meal, fish meal, krill meal, shrimp meal. This is already added to it. Something else that's already added to it is a probiotic mixture. People sometimes poo-poo yeasts. They don't know much about yeast. Live yeast bred for aquaculture are direct consumers of ammonia, super high nutrition, and the cornerstone of a lot of aquaculture probiotic diets. So what you have in here is a couple of species of yeast, a few species of lactobacillus, at least one bacillus species, and all bred for aquaculture purposes. And they will not be subjected and killed by heat. What this is a vitamin and mineral mix. Fish require huge amounts of vitamin C, which is practically gone within 3 months of any commercial fish food. Any food that you do buy, commercial food, dry, flake, any of that type of stuff, after 3 months, generally forget about it. And even if you need to refrigerate it. Another thing that we have is astaxanthin. Astaxanthin, people think it's to make fish red. It's not to make fish red. It serves some serious purposes in nature, and it's commonly found in nature in algae and yeasts, and the microbes and larger critters such as shrimps that eat those algae and yeasts and concentrate it. And why a fish needs it is for a couple of reasons. It's their vitamin A depot. Vitamin A is stored as astaxanthin. We think of it as a red pigment, but it's a vitamin A precursor. And the fish will draw of it out of its skin as it needs it. A discus, a black water fish, needs good eyesight. Marine fish, reef fish. Reef fish are exposed to a lot of, it's only the blue light that penetrates to the reef. It's their sunglasses. It's the sunglasses for their eggs, for pelagic spawners in particular. The UV in the sunlight at the surface will kill the eggs if their parents don't have adequate astaxanthin in their system. Soy protein. Soy protein isolate. I use that. You can use it as a total binder, but I kind of use it at the end if I need to soak up a little bit of excess moisture. This is 3 species of lab-grade algae, the cost of which, say, is prohibitive for inclusion in a fish food. Spirulina is probably your least nutritious. You want to go for chlorella, at least, schizotridium, but captive bread for its high fat content. We're not using this for its vegetable value. We're using it because they can be selectively bred to produce a lot of oil as opposed to a lot of carbohydrates. And again, about plant matter, there was some stuff published about discus eating algae and this and that. They're eating it. They're eating it when there's nothing else to eat. I'm only concerned with what they eat in the breeding season and what nourishes them. They can eat all the algae they want. If you weigh the algae or vegetable matter going into a discus, and an hour later, because that's about as long as it's going to last in their guts, an hour later, weigh it coming out of their systems, you'll find out they didn't digest it at all. And being its high sugar content food, the perfect way to get the parasites in their stomach active in eating is to throw a carbohydrate at them. That's the way a microbiologist would assist them to study them, the parasites. If they're in a cyst, you put it in a sugar starch solution and they explode. So actually it'll make the fish sicker. So you want to avoid carbohydrates. The only value in these algae are in their highly unsaturated fatty acid content. Now, this is a mixture. I told you before, the best thing you can give the fish as food is mollusk. So does clam, mussel, squid. They also get real sticky when you use that boomerang-shaped blade I told you about. There's some fish in here. There's some fatty fish, cold water fish. You want cold water fish. You want mackerel. You want smelts. You want cod. You want tuna. Stuff like that. Stuff from cold water. Cold water fish, a fatty fish, a lot of oils. And this again is done with the boomerang-shaped blender. What I do, this particular mixture, my meat mixture, my fresh meat mixture, I tend to add the astaxanthin to it as it's spinning around the food processor. It's just because you need so little of the astaxanthin. I kind of know by eye after 30 years of doing this what color it should change. By the way, astaxanthin can be quite dangerous. The rates that the fish foods, commercial fish foods, or the discus farmers use is for quick results. Eye damage, liver damage, vitamin A toxicity, which can be a long-term situation, a hidden situation. The fish drops dead after 2 years. You don't know why, but you had it for 2 years. You don't look to fix blame any place. It could have been all the astaxanthin you've been feeding it. But a fish can't see out of one eye. Again, too much astaxanthin.
Do you prefer freshwater or saltwater fish?
Sort of. Well, it's not that it's hard to answer. It's, I used to say, well, saltwater fish are my hobby and freshwater fish are my business. I mean, I live, I could drive, maybe even walk 4 miles, if that, and look at one of Florida's biggest coral reefs. You think the Keys are big, you ought to try Hollywood or Palm Beach. These are reefs. And, I can do that, but if I could really spend this weekend doing what I want, I'd probably go back to Venezuela, sit on a rock at Puerto Ayacucho or at San Fernando de Apodaca. I'd sit on a rock and I'd look at the water. I think I'd pretty much look at the water. The only difference would be I wouldn't have a pack of cigarettes with me now. What can I tell you? That's the way I feel about it.
Which is your favorite fish species?
At this point in life, as far as fish goes, I've had everything. What are my favorites? I think my favorites are, in a sense, mentally in the past, whether I have them or don't have them. Discus is certainly a favorite. There are still some mysteries about the discus fish that I'd like to explore. I already mentioned bettas. Anabanthids, particularly betta, and Macropodus, the paradise fish, interest me greatly. It's interesting to see when you've collected in the wild and you go, these are not all betta splendens, to then see some scientists also notice that and make 4 species out of them. Okay, I want to start with the wet part of the mixture. In the end, we're probably going to talk about 50-50, thereabouts, wet to dry mix. Now, what this wet mix consists of, and I do change it as to availability, sometimes as to species of fish, is I've got my clam meat in there, the fresh clam meat, squid, some conch, there's some small oily fish, anchovy, whole, stuff like that. And what I've done is the astaxanthin, we'll add a little bit over here, but what I do, as you see, it tends to clump, is what I generally do is I add the bulk of it to the stuff in the blender, to the seafoods in the blender while I'm mixing it, because after doing this for 30 years, I kind of know what the color should be like. It's a little tough to mix by hand, but by the time I'm done, the astaxanthin will be in there. Usually I make 100 pounds of this stuff at a time. So, okay. What I'm going to do now is this is probiotic formula. This probiotic formula consists of a couple of species of yeasts, lactobacilli, bacilli, and some other neat stuff. And also what's really important, which gets to working soon in the water actually, is the enzymes. This stuff sort of like self-digests itself. That's another thing. When it comes to fry foods, and we're going to have a great artificial discus diet come out of this. Same plate. Probiotics mature the larval fish's gut sooner than an aquarius can do it alone. And the fish actually start feeding and utilizing food quicker if you use that. What I'm going to do, get the drying process going. This is clam meal, shrimp meal, fish meal, all sorts of good marine proteins that also have a drying quality to them. They will absorb moisture. So let's start using real nutritious foods to start absorbing moisture. See where we get. I suggest if you're going to do something like this, is that you do it in small lots until you get the hang of it. In other words, get all your ingredients, but only make a few ounces at a time in case you have to trash it. Okay, another thing we're going to add, vitamins. For the sake of marine fish, a little bit heavy on the lysine, which is a protein, it's not a vitamin per se. But this would be considered a vitamin, mineral, amino acid type mixture. Heavy on the vitamin C. You want to have at least a gram or 2 or 3 in a kilo of food. There's a little bit of a drying quality to that mixture. The algae are oily. So these algae are lab raised for their oil content, their fatty acid content. They're not genetically modified, they're environmentally modified to produce excessive amounts of fatty acids as opposed to carbohydrates. So the mixture is tightening up to a good degree at this point. I feel it's starting to get a bit tacky. I could add soy protein isolate if I wish. Well, why don't I show you how I can do that? I'll take a little bit of it and bind it with soy protein isolate, just so you can see how it works compared to my favorite homemade binder over there. As you can see, it's starting to thicken, sticking to the spatula. It needs a little more probably to complete it. Thing is, it's going to absorb moisture for 10 or 20 minutes, so you probably are not going to see the end of this part of the story. But as you can see, and you test it in a glass of water or in your aquarium as you're going along. I'd have to wait, like I said, about 10 minutes to see how it'll ultimately bind up, but it's not going to bind up anywhere near what I'm going to show you next. Which is the binder I explained before. Now what I've done is I've used the concept of protein sparing. In other words, I've added no ingredient, unless it's 100% necessary, that is diminishing the protein value and the total nutritional value of the end product. This will need a bit of time for the binder to absorb all this great stuff. I don't see any need to add further soy protein isolate for this blend, as there's no obvious moisture collecting on the surface or anything like that. Okay, now I'm gonna let this dry. Now, as this is drying, let me show you some neat things. For you guys artificially raising discus, here's your white dish or your white sheet of plastic, whatever you use. There you go. The baby discus will just eat it. And it's far superior to just egg yolk. If you're in love with egg yolk, just put the egg yolk in there and bind it up. Once this is dry, it'll sit there all day long. And there is nothing wrong with letting baby discus, larval discus, eat 8-hour-old food. Nothing at all. As a matter of fact, because of the probiotics, it's actually going to become more nutritious as time goes on.
Okay, I really like this question. What would your ultimate aquarium look like?
The ultimate aquarium, it's occurred to me several times. I'd go to Asia and I'd see marine tanks. Now remember, they don't read our books, nor would they ever. I've seen marine tanks, I mean with corals, you know, the size of coffee tables. They're breeding stuff we're first breeding today, 20 years ago. I would look at those reef tanks and I'd say, well, is that the ultimate aquarium? But the oceans, when it comes to reef, all I gotta do is drive those few miles, put on a mask, and I'm in the ultimate marine aquarium. So I don't know how many years ago, I gave a talk, I think it was to the Texas Cichlid Association, but I ended up in Dallas. And there's a private aquarium there. It's called the Dallas World Aquarium. They have the Dallas City Aquarium. Ex-curator being Dave Schlesser, who many of us know and love. Certainly an interesting place. But the Dallas World Aquarium is apparently the glorified hobby of somebody who could afford to build a perfect aquarium to house what he likes. And it was in there that I saw my ultimate aquarium. I'm not certain it could be put to... my interests with this man, they were just so similar. And one thing he had a big tank of the leafy or the weedy sea dragons, which I've killed many of before they became protected. I mean, I was a little jealous of that, but I really didn't want it. But what he had was an Amazon tank. it was like a diorama. You sit in like almost like a theater. And the aquarium is wall to wall with fish and turtles. And then in other places, he had marmosets, he had toucans, tamarins. He had all these critters that I've kept and had at the time even. And I'm picturing them, how to set them up being together in the same massive room. How do you get the toucans not to eat the tamarins? How do you get the tamarins not to give the fish roundworms? That can be dealt with. That can be dealt with. I think mirrors, windows, this, that. So to me, the ultimate aquarium would be like sitting on that rock in the middle of nowhere in South America, whether it was San Fernando de Apodaca, whether it was, I don't know, the Xingu River, but just having the totality in front of me. Oh, and the plants. Plants are critical to the whole thing. I don't think I'll ever have it. But that answers, that's my answer to the question. Having a piece of the world, an entire piece of the world, in one room. So, as you can see, I use my preferred binder. It's about 15 minutes has passed now. We have something that will stick to the glass. Or can be fed in any manner you wish. Just as an aside, what I did with the soy protein isolate, to me, is not as good. It's pretty firm. You might want to try it. Might be perfectly fine for other types of fish. For different types of fish may prefer that, is what I meant. Now, here's a clever thing you can do. I have a few of these clam shells and scallop shells that are drilled and have a hole in them, and you attach a thread to them. And you can put any kind of amount of this stuff in it. You can freeze these. You can even put different ingredients in them. You could put pellets in there. You could put bits of plaster for parrotfish. Many, many things you can do. You can smear this mixture on coral or on a piece of rock. So the butterfly fish you just got, who's pecking at pieces of dead coral looking for food, will find food, and you can get stuff feeding on it. As far as freshwater stuff goes, your plecos, they'll eat it out of a clam shell or pretty much anything you want. And for those of you who want to actually feed their fish wood, you can take some hardwood chunks or scraps. That happens to be aspen. And you can make yourself wood pellets. Like I said, this will harden up. This will harden up. You can do this, you can do that. And I put it in a plastic bag, I flatten it out.
Do you have any curious anecdote that you can share with us about the hobby?
We're on Lake Manicaparu. We came across some people that we knew, and the guide used to use this fellow Eduardo all the time. Fascinating man, knew several languages, it's called a Caboclo. These are the river people of mixed blood. Indigenous people plus Portuguese plus whatever. They know their way around the block. So he says, we can stay at my relative's place. It's right over there, whatever. So we bring the boat over. And, you know, we're in the flooded forest, but this is a patch of real land. There was a house up on stilts, and the property was inhabited by every kind of barnyard animal you could think of. I mean, the flies were thick. So Eduardo says, he says, come on, they'll make us dinner and everything else. And a couple of the people I was with and took with me thought that was perfectly fine. I thought it was really a horrible idea. And I had learned long ago to, on these trips, because I was going very often, bring my own food. You know, even if it's just like a dried salami and a sack of Brazil nuts. And I never did get sick, well, until I finished the story. But I never got food poisoning. I think Jack Daniels and other alcoholic beverages go a long way to preventing disease. But anyway, I don't want to go into the house because I'd have to slog through this gooey substrate leading up to the house. And the whole thing just, I mean, sheep, pigs, goats, chickens, ducks, I mean, and remember, like, it's flooded forest, so I mean, they're concentrated on this little patch of land with a house on it. So I said, listen, I'm gonna stay on the boat. I said, and I pointed, I said, kid, can I use, is it okay to just borrow one of the canoes? He said, yeah, be my guest, go ahead. So I took the fishing rods and whatever, and tossed it all over to the canoe, or however I got it over there. And then I took a leap to get into the canoe. Well, as graceful as I'm sure you all think I am, I ended up in the muck. So, okay, I get into the canoe. Now, it wasn't too many feet away. You're in that pure Amazonian water again. So I just dive in, clean myself off. All this black water all over me, and it's kind of astringent. Tastes great. I mean, you know, I wash all this crap off of me, and I decide to go fishing. And it's getting dark. I mean, you know, you're on the equator. The sun crashes into the horizon at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And it's getting dark, and I have lines in the water, and the piranhas are eating my bait, as usual. And I'm really getting no place. Oh, and I'm eating my Brazil nuts and dried sausages, which probably were made out of the same things walking around the crap, you know, in the yard over there. So what I do is I end up falling asleep. And I get up the next morning at the dawn, like at 6 o'clock, and I have no, I got about 3 lines in the water. I mean, totally, the leader's bitten off, everything, I mean, you know. So I jumped in, took another bath, ate some more Brazil nuts, and cupuaçu, this Amazonian fruit that's absolutely amazing until you realize that it's loaded with maggots. But anyway, I caught some interesting killifish. I think they were called, I thought I discovered something new. But one of the fellas we ran into on that trip was the famous Killie guy, Rudy Vildekamp, who also was there. Same time I was there, he caught the same fish. He identified him for me, and rare but far from unheard of. I think it's Fluvelo panchax or something, and they've got bright white. The irises of their eyes are like a fluorescent white, and they're really cool. But I didn't take any alive or whatever, but I think Wildekamp did. Anyway, so we chase discus in Manica, Peru, whatever. We make our way back to Manaus. I make my way back to New York at the time, and a couple of days later, I come jumping up out of bed like my legs are on fire. I go, I don't know what is going on here. But I mean, it was like a line, both legs. It was like exactly to the depth that I went in the water. So I had this friend, Dick Green, who was a dermatologist. I says, I gotta see you. I said, he was also an adventurer type guy, but he used to do like white water rafting and stuff in the US, but he always felt a bond to me, you know, because I was the Amazonian explorer and whatever. Yeah, come right over. So I come over, just take off your pants. He takes one look, rolls on the floor laughing. Rolls on the floor laughing. He says, I haven't seen that since a book when I was in medical school. And just continues to laugh. I says, Dick, this ain't funny. I'm ready to kill myself. This itching is unbelievable. He says, well, you got two choices. I said, what? Between life and death? Well, you know, give me the story. He says, well, what you got's this intermediate host of a fish parasite. I says, you're kidding. I said, you know what a geophagus is? You're basically telling me I'm like a geophagus. He says, well, be that as it may, I could give you a medication that's gonna make you it's gonna make you sick to your stomach. It's gonna kill all of these things. They're all gonna die at once. Your body's gonna violently react to it. And you'll eventually get rid of these things. They'll be absorbed. I go, oh, are you telling me that's the good news, you know? He says, no. He says, here's plan B. He says, I'm going to give you can go to the drugstore and buy Benadryl. I'm going to write down how much the maximum dosage a human being can take. He says, do you have to do anything for the next 3 or 4 days? I said, have to? No. He goes, good. What I'm going to do is basically going to knock you out. You're going to sleep this thing off. Okay? When all is said and done, I take the production of food, put it in a baggie, what I do is I do it as thin as reasonably possible so it will thaw out quickly. Now remember, I prepared this about a half an hour ago at this point. And what you do is you see the consistency. Like I said, you could have a glass of water right next to you. And what you do is you can add more binder or more liquid material or just water until it really becomes a paste that doesn't fall apart easily in the water. And properly made, it can sit all day on the inside glass or in a clamshell or on an expensive china plate if you wish. Put it in the aquarium and they will eat it. The one very important thing is get your fish on paste food early on. Much easier to worm a fish, apply medications. No reason to put medicines for intestinal parasites in the water. Put it right in the food.
Do you have somebody you admire or look up to in the aquarium hobby?
I may actually have to say you. Because you did something. See, what you did, you won't be recognized for. You showed those habitat shots, and all people are looking at, ooh, you see that plant? Ooh, I was looking at the currents. I was looking at how the fish behave. There was a lot of videos. There was a lot of videos that people aren't looking. And you know, I remember I went with Dr. Ilse Walker at Input to some stream. She was explaining to me about nitrification and the very acid water. And no fish book has what she told me. Totally wrong. Totally wrong. Because obviously if nitrification didn't take place, the Asian rainforest, the Amazon basin, the Orinoco basin would be polluted messes. So it does take place. It's just the hobbyist doesn't know how to do it. At any rate, you know, I was standing in the stream and I go, oh, I thought, you know, and discus were there. And she said, and I said, you know, I thought discus were from still waters. She goes, still waters? This stuff is coming down from the Andes at, I don't know, something like 20 miles an hour. She said, during this conversation, your last sentence, millions of gallons went through your, between your legs. She said, there's no still water. It's moving. And see, this is something that your videos show. I pay attention to stuff like that. That stuff matters. Everything matters. People say, well, you're a perfectionist, you're this. My income depended on it. If the beef heart thing is worth 20%, if the current thing and how to apply it is worth 2%, and this is worth 3%, by the time I'm done, I need a quarter of the space, a quarter of the labor, a quarter of the electricity to make twice as much money as the guy with the big place. I think I may have said it before. Show me a big hatchery, big filters on it. I say right away, the person doesn't know what they're doing.
Do you have any advice for your fellow hobbyists worldwide?
Yeah, if I would give advice to my fellow hobbyists, particularly this is within 24 hours of reading the last hobby magazine, is if you want to learn stuff, look to the aquaculture magazines. Go back to before the internet, where you will see original peer-reviewed research that's going to answer so many of the things you're still fighting about. All the information's there. The fish haven't changed. They've been around the planet. If you think of it, every filter is a variation of an underground filter. There's nothing new in filtration. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of negative. Wet dries are good, but they're not new. Chinese have been using wet dries since the beginning. Little ones, very inexpensive, that go on top of the tank. Pump water up, drip it down. Nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. The only thing we have, in my mind, better is lighting. Lighting on the marine side. Lighting on the freshwater side is just not in the hobby. It's just not in the hobby. It's there. The information's there. It's not being utilized. Advice. Advice is to go back that works and stop listening to, you don't know who's on that forum in the internet. And a lot of people go, well, I'm a biologist. Well, I'm a biologist too. A biologist is also the person who could tell you how to grow begonias or pansies or whatever the devil that is. Doesn't mean you know a darn thing about fish. Even PhDs. I got a friend who's got a PhD in marine biology. He can tell you everything there is to know about some kind of crab that lives in the mud in Alaska. You ever asked him how to set up a marine aquarium? Here you go. I don't know.
Mark, I want to thank you for this interview, for your time, and do you have any final words, something you'd like to add?
No matter how powerful a person is or how insignificant a person is, when you share your hobby with that person, it's really amazing. Then you become equals. I'm talking about Chinese in particular. Chinese people way high up in the government. I designed the fish room for the general of the army of the northern sector of the People's Republic of China. When you meet people like that, and you're both discus guys, you treat, it doesn't matter what this guy could do for me, and he did plenty. But the tropical fish has been something to me a lot more than just having a big fish tank with a bunch of rare fish that nobody else has.